Totally Football Show. Today, dead season walking, dramatic latest. Gunners pre-Paris get parried by Palace, while at the Etihad, Martinez shaken, Bernardo stirred, as another Emmy Spiller sees Man City beat Villa. We talk all that, plus Potter goes back to Brighton, relegation bargains, and Burnley and Leeds lay down a marker with Farker and Parker. It's the Totally Football Show. Thursday, 24th of April, beginning your day with a friendly voice listener, perhaps. Natalie Gedra of Sky Sports.
Yes, hello, bom dia.
Thank you for joining us today, Natalie.
Thank you.
Also here, Benji Lanyado, by night known as Pickfair's CEO.
That'll do. Thanks, Jimbo.
You don't like to talk about it. And representing The Athletic, that's the company, not the sporty section of the population, is Duncan Alexander.
Well, that's a bit harsh, but hello.
All right, Duncan.
You don't represent the sporty
Well,
population.
he does, actually, but not in a professional basis.
No, my professional days are gone / non-existent, but, you know.
Duncan does sport. Duncan's a big cyclist.
Oh.
What's your sport of choice,
I
Natalie?
run. Yeah.
Oh, you run? You do marathons, don't
I
you?
do marathons.
Benji?
Yoga for me.
There you go.
Namaste.
We know sports.
Namaste. Yeah.
Namaste to you too. Excellent. Since our last show, listener, a lot has happened. Perhaps in your life, certainly in the world of football, where Leeds and Burnley have been promoted. That happened on Monday. Also, there have been 3 games in the Premier League. Monday saw Forest beat Spurs 2-1, moving Forest back into third place, at least for 24 hours, until Man City, who Forest will be facing on Sunday in the Cup, beat Villa 2-1. That was on Tuesday, and what a dramatic finale to that game. Wednesday then, Palace, the team who Villa will be facing this weekend in the Cup, went to Arsenal and drew 2-2, which means that Liverpool, who are all but champions, only need one more point when they play Spurs this weekend to seal it. Anyway, we'll talk about the weekend's games later on, but did you watch, were you at, perhaps, Duncan, Arsenal Crystal Palace?
I wasn't actually, no, but I did watch it, and I did watch Manchester City Aston Villa.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm invested in the Premier League catching up on games and rearranging matches.
Right, well, these actually games played in advance.
Well, that's true, but fans of neatness don't like it. But fans of, you know, dramatic goals probably do.
Dramatic goals, less than dramatic games, enlivened by pockets of excitement.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair of the Arsenal Palace game. I thought the City Villa one was kind of niggly all the way through, and you could tell both teams.
I enjoyed the preamble to the Arsenal Palace game, which featured you sitting down with young Myles Lewis-Skelly.
Yes, that was lovely. I really enjoyed that one. What a lovely guy. Like, really, really nice.
You always say that about anyone you interview.
That's not fair.
Apart from one guy, do you remember?
Yeah, that guy.
I was gonna say that you just don't ask the about the right people. Maybe I don't have.
Thatcher ever interviewed him?
But really, he is. You know, I always say that you notice people and their personalities by the little things. You know, he memorized everyone's names. He just made
crew?
sure. Yes,
really?
yes.
How big a crew was it? What's your entourage like, Natalie?
No, we were. Oh God, no. We were in. It was me, the camera guy, and there was
you don't remember their name, do you?
Andrew. Hey. He was like, "Oh, hello, nice to meet you, Andrew," and at the end as well. And he just small things like, "How are you guys? Oh, but what have you been up to? What are you gonna do for the rest of your day?" And it's basic stuff.
Because in any interview,
it's just business.
Well, no, what I was going to say was that there's always about 5 to 10 minutes of setup.
Yeah.
Even when they arrive, then while the guy's getting him mic'd up or you're adjusting the lights or whatever it is. And that usually puts quite a bit of pressure on you as a person doing the interview to just kind of keep the atmosphere nice, not have any awkward pauses before you start the interview, which is going to break the kind of the feeling, as the Italians would call it.
He just has a really warm personality.
So he did all of that himself, basically.
I know it sounds very basic, but it's not very common.
Huge.
Yeah.
So this was his first ever sit-down interview.
It was his first ever sit-down interview, and in the middle of the interview, if you said something nice about his football or his mom, like I did, because she's just a trooper, and he would just, the first thing he would be like, "Oh, thank you for saying that," you know, like just this really really small things, and he really likes to hear about people, and just ask about yourself and what have you been up to, and how long has it been since I lived in the UK. Like just small things. He really takes interest in other people, and he's just a really, really nice guy. And he said some interesting stuff as well.
I mean, he speaks already the kind of interview language. This wasn't necessarily going to be a podcast about basically with Myles Lewis-Skelly, but just to kind of finish off by saying, when you mentioned it this morning, I asked you about it, and you said you thought that that the bar wasn't very high for footballers being nice in interviews or footballers acting nice in your experience.
Yeah, it's just that there is a protocol that they're all very polite, okay? And so there's the protocol that most of them follow, but you can identify the ones that are really genuine. And he was just really down to earth and really genuinely kind to everyone.
Well, that's nice.
They're so polished, these academy kids these days.
Yeah,
it's almost a bit of a shame. Like, it's obviously much more interesting when you get a full crook, shouting and being very angry, as he said over and over again. But yeah, it is. I hear what Natalie's saying, and obviously it's great for these kids, themselves and their families, that they're being really sort of trained and polished and made to, make sure you put your best foot forward in these things. It does make for sort of fewer characters.
Well, that's so true.
Jimbo, doesn't it?
That's so true.
I disagree with Myles Lewis-Skelly though, because obviously on the pitch this season he got a lot of criticism unfairly for his Haaland celebration. And he was, before the Real Madrid away game, he was there sort of filming on the pitch. I think he's got that like extra sort of 5% of personality that will take him quite far, which I'd actually say that a lot of players that come through don't have that, and they are a little bit timid. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
How did he get on in the Palace game?
Not that well.
No? Okay. So it was 2-2. Both teams had bigger matches.
Too busy asking the Palace players how they were. It was, didn't work.
Thanking them for their kind words.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal dropping points again from holding the lead, which they have done quite a bit this season. But as I say, they've got bigger matches coming up. Both teams.
It's a strange end to the season. I was at the Brentford game in between the two Real Madrid matches, and no one was even watching that game. Everyone was either talking about the Real Madrid game that had happened or the forthcoming Real Madrid game. And this is the same. I mean, Arsenal know they're pretty much going to finish second. Then they kind of, the main thing last night was not getting injuries really ahead of next week's big match. So,
the defensive line, because you mentioned Myles Lewis-Skelly, it's probably the defensive line who's going to play against PSG. It's the same back four that played against PSG. So if there is something that we were looking more carefully was the defensive line, and there were a couple of mistakes that led to the goals, but maybe that's down to, having a very intense period and just moments of lack of concentration. I can't see them making these mistakes against a team like PSG, who will definitely punish you.
Rayo had a weird one.
I mean, Saliba did in the last Champions League game in a pretty big game. So I don't know.
But not at a point where it was that. I think that's to Natalie's point, that it's the concentration levels at this have to be so high, and they can't be when you're at home against Crystal Palace in essentially a dead rubber.
So. The goals.
Good goals.
The goals were good, no?
Well, apart from Trossard's, how there's some players that like you associate with scoring great goals. I'm thinking like Trevor Sinclair back in the day, Laetitia, Bale sort of seem to always score great goals. Trossard is a fantastic scorer of rubbish goals. He's like always like his goals seem to like bobble into the corner, take little deflections, and this is like massively to his credit, by the way. It's to do with his accuracy in finding the corner is pretty damn impressive. It doesn't matter how hard or beautifully you kick it. And also kicking it at a time when the defender isn't quite expecting or the goalkeeper isn't quite expecting. Anyway, he's one of those players that is like so unspectacular, but really effective. There's three goals in 2 games for him now, and play a variety of roles.
Well, and playing that role because Mikel Merino wasn't in the side. No, neither was Ben White, and there is some doubt about whether they will be available for the game next week against Paris Saint-Germain. That's Tuesday night. If you didn't like his goal, how did you feel about Jakub Kvio's?
Yeah.
Robin Van Persie-esque, I felt.
It was great. Well, it wasn't quite as horizontal as Robin Van Persie, but there are a few better things in football than a bullet header from distance.
Nice.
And it was, beautifully executed. And actually, again, boring, but it was a fantastic set piece. The Sky Sports analysis afterwards really showed what was going on, and basically
going on?
It was NFL, basically.
Yeah, it was NFL. Everyone apart from Kivior's job was to block, to create space for Kivior to get in there and then execute this bullet header. I wonder if it was like they talked about it as like this is Kivior's set piece. Satisfying.
Magnificent. Then you had the equaliser from Eberechi Eze, which people lost their minds over. I wasn't sure that it was that amazing a goal. It kind of bounces a lot on its way in.
I mean, the idea was the Paul Scholes against Bradford where he catches it absolutely cleanly.
Yeah.
Eze kind of hits it into the ground in it, but it's still good technique.
Good goal. I preferred the second Palace goal from Mateta. Him again. Delightful. 7 minutes to go. And a sensational chip.
Yeah, he seized upon the error we mentioned from Saliba, and then Palace said afterwards that they knew that Raya wanders during games.
Right.
And he definitely was out of position. And it was good. It was a kind of like a dugout chip, if that's a phrase. He kind of had a very straight leg, but it looked like it might be going over, then it hit the bar and went in. But it was a lovely, archetypal, lovely finish for a big man sort of goal.
And he doesn't even look at Raya because he's been watching the game from the dugout because he didn't start for Palace. And he's been just checking how Raya is always high on the pitch. So but the way that he makes the turn and the distance of the shot, and when you notice the moment of the shot, he's not looking at Raya at any point, and that's just cool. Remarkable. Yeah.
1997, the Champions League final when Borussia Dortmund beat Juventus. The Paul Lambert man of the match, marking Zidane out of the game match. The Lars Ricken goal. Again, Dortmund had studied their film. Stat about Mateta, since Oliver Glasner's first Premier League game in charge of Palace, only 3 players have scored more Premier League goals than Mateta. He's on 27 since whenever it was last season that Glasner came in. So only Alexander Isak, Haaland and Salah. Remarkable, no?
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. Good draw then for Palace, who at the weekend are going to be taking on Aston Villa as they try to reach their first FA Cup final since 2016, when you weren't in the country back then, were you?
No, it was the year I moved, actually.
I'm not sure if Alan Pardew's touchline dance reached Brazil.
No, unfortunately.
Its spiritual home.
It should. Maybe it should have,
Yeah. But anyway, they're facing Villa, as I say, Palace. And they've got a terrific record against the Villains. Again, since Oliver Glasner took charge, 4 games, they've won 3, drawn the other one. They've had a 5-0 win, and their most recent meeting, just 2 months ago, saw them beat Villa 4-1. Woof.
And maybe this one is going to be a matter of who will deal with the experience or lack of experience in this type of games, because Villa comes in the back of 2 big fixtures against PSG, played Champions League, and now it's in the semi-final. So it looks like another day of work for them. As for Palace, it's a bit different. But when Oliver Glasner was asked about it after the match, he was like, no, the grass is going to be green for everyone. Nice. There's going to be 11 players, So,
but vibe check, Crystal Palace are going to be, on the uppers after that lovely Mateta equaliser. Villa, I think, will be feeling pretty sorry for themselves
after what happened to them at the death of the game at the Etihad.
Exactly, and the look on Emery's face at the end of that game, he was gutted, absolutely gutted. I mean, it was great telly, but I do wonder if that could give Palace the edge. They're going into this with enthusiasm and excitement.
Certainly could give Man City the edge, that game. It's put them in a very healthy position indeed. For staying in the top 5 and getting a Champions League place. Their 5th win in the last 6 games, they drew the other one. It means they've now got a 4-point lead on the team in 6th place, who are Chelsea, and a pretty easy run-in, you would think. A home to Wolves, away to Saints, home to Bournemouth, and away to Fulham. Yeah, a game which began with another uncharacteristic error from your friend of mine, Emi Martinez.
Yeah, that Yashin Trophy chance of winning is down to 98.4% now for him. Shame. It actually started 18 seconds in with Rashford hitting the post.
That's true.
It looked really good. But yeah, Bernardo Silva had a shot which he should have kept that, kind of spooned it onto his leg, and then it went in the goal. But I thought Villa, for much of the game, were the better team. Although City did have most of the ball. Villa got a penalty. Rashford equalised from the spot.
Right.
It was a VAR special. I think it was probably a penalty.
Yeah.
Although they showed a not conclusive angle of it on the City Jumbotron, if that's what it's called, and the fans. And Pep Guardiola in particular got particularly angry about it.
Did he?
Furious.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looked
It's good
like
to have something work up the fans because it was a pretty flat atmosphere and a lot of empty seats.
well,
as
there's another protest.
Yeah, it was a protest.
So City fans have been very good this season in terms of getting stuff done with their protests. They've got a season ticket freeze, but there's some other season ticket rules that have just come in. You know, like you've got to go to a certain amount of games to keep your season ticket, which seems a bit harsh given the number of games that are moved for TV and things now these days. So they're actually very good at organising these sort of boycotts. So that was very evident again. But yeah, it looked like it was going to end as a draw, but then up popped Mateus Nunes,
Of all the people.
the mercurial Nunes.
And there are so many parts of that goal that tell a story. Like, firstly, one of the reasons that I think Emery was looking so gutted at the end of the game was that the error that led to that goal was from Disasi, right? As in, Doku just goes past him very, very quickly. Now, obviously, Doku...
Was that an error? Or was that just Doku being...
I think you've got to know who you're playing up against and you don't go too tight there on the wing. And the issue is, and Villa fans will have noticed this, he's done this before in a crucial game. In the first leg against PSG, at half-time, he took off Matty Cash and brought on Disasi.
Right.
And both of PSG's goals in that second half were ultimately exploiting Disasi. So he's compounded a mistake and it's cost him the game. So on the one side, I think that's one of the reasons why Emery will be so frustrated. I think this is on him. And on the other side, so Man City,
It was a brilliant assist, though, from Doku.
It was. And actually, it's quite, Doku and Nunes were maybe slight symbols of Man City's not quite eliteness anymore, really? Inconsistent players. I personally thought Doku might be another kind of Adama Traore with no end product, right? But look at his end product in that goal. And Nunes finishing it off really nicely. That's now a goal and assist in 2 games for him. So them coming good, again, might be the story of City kind of turning their season around.
Yeah, I was happy for Mateus Nunes, actually, because he's been having a tough season, playing as a fullback, which is not his position.
Right.
Not doing, clearly making the effort, but not always doing well there and just not thriving in midfield. But he's committed to the team and he's committed to whatever it is that he needs to do. So I was happy for him. And even the way City won, like this change of mentality, because I did Everton City on the weekend and I asked Pep about this different type of motivation with clinching the Champions League spot and winning a league title. And I know players, they will say, oh, the Champions League is our title this season, but it's not. A title is a title. Manchester City knows about it better than anyone. And Pep said, no, it's normal to have a different type of motivation. I'm not going to stand here and say that it's the same motivation, that we should have the same motivation, but they need to grind out some games. And I think that was the case with Villa, just showing that level of energy. If they can carry this to the semi-final against Nottingham Forest, then that will be big.
And Duncan mentioned Rashford was great. Like, there's a lot of noise about the fact that he's starting over Ollie Watkins at the moment. Like, his performances, I think, demand that. And I think it's probably true to say that in the last 2-3 months, apart from Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford has been Man United's best player. And they're just not seeing any of that. And with my England hat on, which is always permanently close to my head, very good to see. He's an option for us.
With a kind of St George's cross over the top.
Yeah, let's say it is. And conversely, Grealish, on the bench again, didn't get any minutes, second game in a row. James McAtee was preferred to him, and then he moved Marmoush over to the left. And did a little bit of digging into the data. In the games that Grealish has been involved in the Premier League this season, i.e. like started or on the bench, he's played only 30% of the possible minutes.
Good Lord.
Get him out. Save the Grealish one. It's very important that he leaves City this summer, because there's still a player there and could be a player for England, but he's not going to get anything in Man City.
Do you think he's going to leave this summer? Any sign of that happening, Duncan?
I think it's probably quite likely, yeah.
Really?
He's also, I think he's got a year left in his contract.
Oh,
but,
right.
Back to Villa, maybe?
I don't know. He could go to West Ham.
Oh, I'd love that so much.
Would you like that?
I'd love it so much.
All right. Ed Lawrence writing in on the subject of the Watkins controversy, the Fury. He says the reason Watkins has been dropped, he hasn't been himself this season, we suspect, through injury. He's Watkins, so he's still contributed, but it's been comfortably his worst season under Emery. Villa's problems at the end of games continuing then. Only Southampton have conceded more added time Premier League goals than them this season. And I think no other team has lost more matches that they weren't losing before the 90 had finished. Forest are in action in the FA Cup semi-final this Sunday afternoon against Man City. Last Monday night, they went to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and beat them 2-1 for Nuno Espirito Santo, back at his briefly former club, and also after the 2 straight defeats that Forest had suffered. Benji, you saw the last part of this, and I saw the rest of it when Forest was really, really good. I mean, in a Forest way, striking clinically and then letting Spurs have a lot of possession. And then right at the death, Spurs almost got something back. The Richarlison goal in the 87th, and then there was a key block on the line from Harry Toffolo. Murillo's Shorts says, as good things happen to good people, huge credit to Harry Toffolo, who despite rarely playing, gives his all and is a model pro and completed one of the greatest ever goal line clearances against Spurs. Can you think of a better one? Will that secure Forest a Champions League spot? Can you think of a better goal line clearance than that? Cannavaro in the Nike advert, I would say. But,
good call.
I mean, Roberto Carlos overhead kick. Was that in an advert or IRL?
Maybe.
I mean, if we're talking about actual football games, which I think we probably should, I would go the John Stones one against Liverpool, which essentially won City the title.
The 11 millimeters.
Yeah.
Will this secure Forest a top 5 space? It's still tight. Essentially, if Man City look comfortable with a 4-point lead over the team in 6th, Chelsea, Forest are only 3 points ahead, and there's 4 teams within 1 win of each other there. Forest, Newcastle, Chelsea and Villa.
It's going to be very tight. Forest played Chelsea at home on the last day, which could be narrative heavy. So I think they've still got. I mean, I think they had to win at Spurs. That was a must-win game after a couple of defeats. So it's put them back in the mix. But I mean, it really is. There's basically 4 points between City in 3rd and Villa in 7th. So it's exciting.
Very exciting. Spurs, you'll notice, are not part of that conversation. They are currently down in 16th spot, only 1 point ahead of
West Ham United.
Spurs here suffering their 18th league defeat in 33 games, which, yes, Natalie, is a 55% lose ratio. That's insane.
That is insane. Goodness me.
They've lost 4 of their last 5, which is 80%, I'm thinking.
I mean, a bit like we said about Arsenal earlier, they are very much focused on European football. It's that
United.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be so funny if Bodo Glimt beat them both and went on to, because that's Bodo's route to the final. I'm rooting for Bodo, obviously.
I'm a Glimt man, but fine.
Well, mate, we can be friends. And it'd be a victory for punctuation as well.
There's never been a
slash. I looked this up actually, and there's
he's got Stoke, didn't he?
You get lots of full stops in team names.
German team names.
Like 1 FC Köln,
04 Schalke.
And the only other bit of a
so the full stop comes at the end of Schalke there?
No, I think it's 04 full stop Schalke.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then FC Köln are 1.FC Köln. And the only other team I found that had notable punctuation on them was actually FC20, which is, I think it's FC20 apostrophe 68. Or whatever the year maybe they were formed was. They've got to a final before, but no apostrophed, no punctuation laden team,
right.
No team with punctuation
right.
in their name has won a European trophy before.
Really?
I mean, stick that up on the dressing room.
Well, I'm not including like AS Roma, for example.
Yeah.
Because that's
just letters.
I think there is a dot in the A after the A and the S.
Yeah.
But that's not interesting. It's not interesting punctuation.
I think it's way more interesting than anything I had on this game.
On Bodo Glimt?
Yeah. I mean, they play within the Arctic Circle. There's that.
That's cool.
That is very, well, literally. Yeah. Shifting back to Forest, though, what do we think of their chances of beating City and getting themselves a place in the final.
Well, this season, the first match was early December between them at the Etihad, and City won 3-0. They came in the back of 7 matches without a win. And then like Kevin De Bruyne played really well. City had a really good match. And then the second one was in early March, and it was quite uneventful, to not to say boring.
Uneventful.
Yeah, uneventful is a nice word for boring.
Oh.
And I think Hudson-Odoi got the goal, but it was just a really good example of how Forest can frustrate City into creating big chances. Because I find the contrasting the styles of football are always very interesting between City and Forest, because City will have the ball, but will they create big chances? And even if they have those individual moments, they will have to go past Murilo and Milenkovic, who've been amazing, and Matsels, one of the keepers of the league, if not the keeper of the league. So yeah.
Sales was brilliant on Monday night from what I saw. A lot of really fantastic saves. I mean, he's got to be the goalkeeper of the season, I think.
You're having him as goalkeeper of the season?
Yeah.
For me, yeah.
I mean, it took Forest, about 400 goalies before they found a good one, but they really have.
But it was, again, I think we've spoken about this before, but it vindicates their approach of just like circulating players until one sticks. And they've ended up with a fantastic 11, a decent squad.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Forest haven't been to the Cup final since 1991. Who did they beat in the semi-final?
Was it Manchester City?
It was West Ham United.
Oh, right.
4-0. Must be a painful, young Benji, painful memories, I suspect.
If Forest do
Or
triumph,
no memories.
Go on, talk about it.
if Forest do triumph this weekend, will that be their first victory in the FA Cup this season? Because they must have won in the 3rd round, but the 4th round, the 5th round, and the 6th round, they all got through on penalty shootouts. Or they got through them all on penalty shootouts. Has a team ever been through 4 shootouts in a row?
Nope. So
Yet.
Something to aim for.
Wow. Haven't won a major trophy.
Like doing penalty shootout.
Forest in 35 years. Could this be the year? Says Sasu, 5 players could easily break the 20 league goals barrier this season. Would that be a record?
No. It's happened 4 times before.
4 times?
2016-17, 09-10,
Yeah.
94-95 and 93-94. Obviously, those 2 seasons were 22 teams. So, excuse me.
Longer
But
seasons, right.
the most recent one, 2016-17, we had Harry Kane on 29, Lukaku on 25, Alexis Sanchez on 24, and Aguero and Diego Costa on 20.
Good Lord.
That's a good lineup of
That's a
strikers.
very, I would say, very 2017 list.
Yeah.
So the 24-25 iteration has Salah, Haaland and Isaac all on 20 or more
That
goals.
shows you how football has changed in a relatively short period of time. Because that initial list, the Harry Kane, that's when strikers were strikers.
Right.
Go through that list again.
Salah, Haaland, the
No,
the
there's
17.
Kane, Lukaku, Sanchez, Aguero, Diego Costa.
Oh,
If you-
I mean, Sanchez is the only one that's a
If
little
you
bit
want
more.
a list of strikers being strikers, the one from 93-94 is Andy Cole, Alan Shearer, Chris Sutton, Matt Letizia, all right, not really a striker, Ian Wright and Peter Beardsley.
Oh,
Oh, so were there 6 there? Or is that
yeah,
5?
that's 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they had 6.
And the
So the
following
record is
season
6.
was Shearer, Fowler, Les Ferdinand, Stan Collymore, Andy Cole again, and Jurgen Klinsmann.
Good Lord. Good Lord. Just in case you were still curious, who are the 5 who are set to do it this time around? You've got Salah, Haaland and Isaac all on 20 plus, with Wood and Mbeumo on 19 and 18. Not far below them is Wissa on 16. Could easily do it. You've got Cunha, Mateta and Palmer on 14. Neither Forest nor Brentford play in the league this weekend. So we won't be seeing too much movement on that particular race. What is happening this weekend? Well, Liverpool can win the title Sunday afternoon if they get a point or more against Tottenham Hotspur. Also this weekend, Chelsea and Newcastle are the only 2 of the top 5 chasers who will be featuring in league action. Lunchtime on Saturday, Chelsea host Everton. Anything but a win could leave them in real trouble given the current battle for top 5 places. At 3 o'clock on Saturday, Newcastle host Ipswich, who will be down if they fail to win that match, the Tractor Boys. The other games this weekend, 3 o'clock on Saturday, also sees Wolves taking on Leicester, Newcastle against Ipswich, West Ham down at Brighton, Benji, and Saints Fulham. And then on Sunday, Bournemouth host Man United at 2, which, Natalie, you're going along to for reasons which we'll get into perhaps in a short while. To briefly touch on Liverpool against Spurs, as I say, this could be their chance. So this could be them celebrating the league title in front of their own fans for the first time in 35 years. And the odds look good, given that Spurs are winless in 15 visits to Anfield. And Liverpool, in their last 3 meetings at that stadium, have scored exactly 4 goals each time. Each time. Woof.
Yeah, I think it's quite nice in a way that Palace didn't sneak a win at Arsenal in midweek, because it's nice for Liverpool to have. I mean, I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to win the league. And you probably couldn't have ordered a better fixture than Spurs at home. It's a big game, but it's not like tricky, is it? So the atmosphere should be good.
I don't think it's going to be boring, and I would be sad as a neutral to have a boring game, like the final one, because Spurs, they
entertain us.
They are entertained. They create chances, you know.
For both teams.
Yeah.
Also, and
yes, exactly.
And Postecoglou was a Liverpool fan as a kid. So,
Was he?
I mean, he gets to see Liverpool win the title, which I'm pretty sure he would have dreamt of as a kid. So that is quite cool in a way.
Spurs could be 17th by the end of this weekend if they lose, and West Ham beat Brighton on Saturday. Here's a stat for you. They are 42 points behind Liverpool, which is the second biggest gap they've ever had with an opponent in Premier League history.
Yeah, the bigger was
chasm.
43 points behind Arsenal when Arsenal won the league at White Hart Lane in 2004. So both occasions they watched the opposition seal the league title. So
Remarkable.
Well, potentially.
Craig Johnson was an Australian who played for Liverpool.
Yes.
Do you reckon that's what did it for Ange?
Is that
I
right?
reckon that is the thing.
I'm thinking of the era that Ange would have sort of decided to support them.
Very interesting interview recently with Craig Johnson on theathletic.com.
Is that
Obviously
right?
a man who's an artist, a musician, wrote the Anfield rap, designed the Predator boot.
What?
He wrote the Anfield rap,
Yep.
and he's a musician.
And he designed the Adidas Predator boot. So he is a man of many talents.
And the Anfield rap.
And then,
Right.
I'd say that's one of the better football songs.
Yeah.
Top 5 chasers. Chelsea are hosting Everton. Will they get Moised? Will they?
You know, I was at the Goodison last weekend, and I was quite impressed with first the disappointment with Everton players and even David Moyes on not beating City, and I think that's very telling in terms of mentality, but also the level of organization that Everton showed defending against City, especially in the first half. But they will have a big miss, that's Tarkowski, because he picked up an injury in the second half, and that really affected Everton in that game, and even Jordan Pickford and David Moyes, they both said so. So yeah, it is going to be a big miss for them.
Will he be back this season, Tarkowski?
Unlikely, I'd say. And
Yeah,
it's a shame because
yeah.
last weekend was his 111th consecutive start in the Premier League.
Wow.
And he was two behind the record for an outfield player. Both of the players ahead of him were Chelsea players, actually, Frank Lampard and the leader, Wayne Bridge. It was a Wayne Bridge too far for Tarkowski.
That's so nice, isn't it? In terms of goalkeepers, would it be Brad Friedel who had the...
Yeah, Friedel did like 180 odd, I think, and included a red card within that, but the suspension got rescinded.
Because it was Brad Friedel.
Yeah, they just were like, he wouldn't do that.
But back to Tarkowski, it is definitely a shame that he might miss the final match at the Goodison, which is it's not a match he would want to miss.
No. Just to mention that last season, a year being a long time in football, Chelsea won this fixture 6-0. 6-0. And who got 4 of those 6 goals?
Cole Palmer?
Bingo. When was the last time he scored a goal?
Oh.
I think November or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's Chelsea anyway, taking on Everton, who haven't actually won at Stamford Bridge in 30 years. But it's very much a new season. And, well, not a new season, but this very much a new occasion for them to do so. Newcastle, meanwhile, who lie 5th at the moment, are hosting Ipswich. And if Ipswich don't win that game, that'll be relegation sorted. And yes, it will be the earliest in Premier League history that all 3 teams have been down.
I mean, you talked about last year. I mean, this time last year, everyone was like, is this the worst 3 teams in Premier League history? And then the 3 that came up went, we'll see about that.
Hold my beer.
Burnley are back, so it's going to be fine.
Benji, you've been scouring the data to have a look at which relegated players, now that they're down, or once they're down, Premier League, the vultures can come in and swoop for.
West Ham.
Well, I do this every year. I make a sort of a vulture list of players to pick up, and West Ham never pick any of them up. And usually it's based on hunch. And last year,
Who were your hunches last year?
Well, okay, this is not a great start.
Let's go.
But it was top of the list was Alfie Doughty at Luton, who was and he had an amazing season.
Yeah,
anyway,
he did.
But also then I had Ross Barkley, Wilson Odobert. So listen, there is some sort of method to the madness. But this year I've gone with hunch again, but also added some data.
Right.
And the data was looking at players who perform impressively or in the top 10, top 20 of 3 relevant attributes to their positions.
Okay.
And Jimbo, the results may surprise you.
What are the 3 relevant attributes?
Well, it depends what position they are. If they're a centre back, you're looking for like clearances, areas. You just want to see them stand out in some way.
Yeah.
What are those kind of, Duncan, you know this? Is it spider charts?
Yeah, radar chart.
Yeah, you want to see it kind of jutting out in 3 different directions. Anyway, bear with me. So
I'm not sure that's technically how players are scouted, but yeah.
So the first 2 players, I've spared them the data treatment because I think you can go on hunch. One, obviously, is Liam Delap. We don't need to talk about Liam Delap. Everyone knows he's a Premier League player. Second, I thought
Man United currently circling.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he just needs to go somewhere where he starts. Yeah, he'll probably end up at Chelsea. They ruin everything, don't they? Yeah.
Okay, who's next?
Tyler Dibbling. I thought that again we can spare him the hunch treatment, the data treatment. Sorry, because but although he actually there was an interesting stat on him. He's in the top 15 best attacking dribblers in the league, despite only starting 18 games, and he gets fouled a hell of a lot as well. So
I
there's
like
data
him because his name rhymes with dribbling.
Yeah, exactly. Dibbling is
Also
dribbling.
runs with a little bit of a Chris Waddle hunch.
And his socks down, let's just...
He's got a hunch, as has Benji.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another publication, actually, yesterday did a list of players from relegated teams who might be of interest to other sides. And he was, of course, very much in there saying, I'd be quite happy to stay at Saints. I've been here since I was 8. And Saints want a lot of money for him.
Yeah, but and they could probably get, I don't know,
you reckon?
30, 40. And someone should do it.
They want more,
He
apparently.
came from Man City, didn't he? And with
Chelsea,
with Chelsea, yeah. And I always worry about there being like a horrible buyback clause in these contracts.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's number 2 for
Shock us with your next one, Benji.
Right, now we're getting into the data.
Oh, right, good.
Okay, finally.
Duncan, do you want to take notes maybe? Yeah. So, the first one, again, might seem a bit obvious, but it's Leif Davis, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, at the beginning of the season, everyone was excited about Leif Davis. And I think
very much this season's Alfie Doughty in a way.
big time. And his star has fallen as Ipswich's have. And I think that...
A leaf has fallen.
Yeah, and he's also currently suspended for trying to take the bottom of Saka's shin off. Anyway, forget about all that defending stuff.
Right.
His attacking stats are amazing. So he's made more key passes than any other Premier League defender. He's made the 3rd most big chances of any Premier League defender, behind only Trent and Lucas Dean.
Right.
Top 10 for corners force and accurate crosses, ahead of Dallo, Livramento, Nico Williams. And all of this is a shit team, right? So this is very impressive. And I found myself thinking, hold on, he's a really good attacking fullback, doesn't necessarily excel at defending. Liverpool.
Right.
There's always talk about Kirkhead and Robinson going to Liverpool. I reckon one of them plus Leif Davis, new left back, problem solved for Liverpool.
Okay. Who else,
Surely
Benji?
he should go to Forest, surely.
The Leaf, Forest? Love it.
Oh, I see, yeah. Duncan, again, talking data here.
Right, sorry.
I don't know if you know anything about that. The other one is amazingly unsexy, but it's Kyle Walker-Peters.
Okay.
He's 28 years old. He feels like a journeyman. He's not. He's only ever played for Spurs and Southampton.
Okay.
And he's been fouled more than any other Premier League defenders, in the top 5 for the successful take-on, so good going forward. Also in the top 20 for ball recoveries. Value buy. I think West Ham should get him to replace someone like Soufal.
Okay, who's the player that you most want at West Ham?
Oh, obviously Liam Delap.
Is it Liam?
But he's not. He's the hunch rather than data. Yeah. I think he'd be perfect for us.
But realistically?
Sorry
to crash your
We're
dreams.
not clever enough to get any of these. We'll probably get... So another one that's I think is a bit interesting is Mateus Fernandes at Southampton, right? He's just a good all-round midfielder. He's top 20 tackles won, top 20 ball recoveries by midfielders, top 20 for key passes as well. The other one may be that this is a deep cut. Victor Christensen at Leicester, right? You're thinking, what? Didn't even start at the weekend.
That's what I'm thinking.
He's won the 3rd most tackles by any Premier League defender. He's in the top 10 for interceptions.
You'll never sing that.
And obviously that's fair enough. Leicester have had to do a lot of defending, but he's also made the 6th most accurate crosses. He's only 22, could be a value buy as well. Darragh O'Shea, another one that actually for Darragh O'Shea for bread and butter centre back activity has had a great season. 4th most clearances by any Premier League defender. 2nd most block shots. 5th most aerials won. He's only 6'2". Anyway, I think this was kind of spurred by Daniel on Monday talking about how Ipswich's side was just full of Championship players, and I'm just not so sure. I think that there are some gems to be plucked by the
Benji.
vultures.
Scouts, if you're listening, Benji, are you going to make your research available?
Nah.
Okay.
But,
I think you should. He's only 6'2" line is really going to convince.
all those aerials, only 6'2".
Inter's treble dreams are over. Did you see this? They've been having a rough week. At the weekend, they got beaten by Bologna. A fabulous goal by Riccardo Orsolini. And then on Wednesday, they played the second leg of the Coppa Italia semi-final against Milan, who have been rubbish all year, except when they play Inter. Max on the Tuesday show was saying that Milan are, how you say, kryptonite for Inter. So it proved, because they beat them 3-0. Inter, who never concede goals, they got beaten 3-0. Inter were all over Milan in the first half of this. Didn't take their chances. We're kind of chuckling about it, as in we'll have these, no question. But Luka Jovic, of all the players, with a brace, and then the always excellent Tijani Reinders with the third, and Inter are out of the cup. Now Napoli are level with them at the top of the league with a much easier run in, and Inter have Barcelona in the semi-final. So will they actually win anything this season? That's very much the question. The other semi-final, if you're Coppa Italia curious, is Bologna against Empoli. Bologna heavy favourites to make the final. They're 3-0 up from the first leg against Empoli. Ooh. Also midweek, Barcelona beat Mallorca 1-0 on Tuesday. Real Madrid beat Getafe 1-0 on Wednesday. So it's still 4 points between the two with 5 games to go. And Natalie's rooting for Barcelona to end any chance of Ancelotti staying on at the Bernabeu. But nobody seems to think that's going to happen now.
Okay, so there is a more careful approach now amongst Brazilians with the Ancelotti situation because they've been hurt before, but not from me. I don't have a careful approach. I am feeling positive about this one. I am ready to pick him up at the airport in Rio. But apparently, the Brazilian FA is waiting for the Copa del Rey final to intensify their approach. We've been hearing
this weekend.
Yes, this weekend. So we hear the Brazilian FA is looking to announce the next manager before June's international break.
Okay. So
soon. The news that come from Madrid is that Ancelotti doesn't want to burn bridges with Florentino Perez, but you know who doesn't? Who does? So his future will be decided in Florentino's time.
Okay.
But the Brazilian FA, they do have a plan B with Jorge Jesus. Yes, Jorge Jesus.
Okay.
Yes, he's at Al Hilal. He managed Flamengo and he did really well in Brazil and he knows Brazilian football really well. So
might that be a better option, Natalie, at the end of the day?
It makes more sense because he's very familiarized with the whole structure or lack of structure in Brazilian football, and especially with the Brazilian FA. But Ancelotti is the dream, you know?
Okay.
So yeah,
I
let
think
us
you
dream.
should have Jorge and Ancelotti can go back to Serie A, where Milan or Roma would welcome him with
James,
open arms.
I don't think.
No?
I don't agree. Yeah, I don't think that.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Is Conceição gone?
It seems to be the case, yeah, but it's total, as again Max was explaining on in Tuesday's show, it's total chaos there. Because first, Milan have got to find a sporting director. The guy who declared that I am the boss, I make all the decisions, Ibrahimovic, has been completely absent without trace all season. So they fell out with Paratici, who was their first pick. And they're now looking at Iglitari, who used to be Lazio boss. We're going into the
But Conceição's still there managing games.
He's still there managing games and doing well in the cups. They won the Super Cup under him and pretty much his first game in charge. And now they're into the final of the Coppa Italia, which would get them into Europe, which they're not going to do by any other means. Are they going to stay with him? No, the plan is to go with probably Max Allegri for next season, but they've got a lot of work to sort that out. And they are a bit of a basket case, although it does bear mentioning that they have completely sorted out their finances, and as much as they've been disappointing on the field, they've actually had back-to-back. Selling Tonali was a big help in this, but they've had back-to-back kind of balanced books, which is for Milan quite unheard of.
Vulgar, if anything. It's vulgar for Milan to do something.
Yeah. Anyway, more in the black than the red these days. Yeah. Back to more kind of geographically adjacent football, and mentioned at the top that Leeds and Burnley got promoted on Monday, the pair of them. Stirring scenes for both clubs. I want to highlight the fact that Scott Parker has now taken 3 different teams from the Championship to the Premier League in the last 6 years. Obviously, the next bit hasn't gone quite as well.
His last game in the Premier League as a manager was the 9-0 defeat to Liverpool. Which,
right. But then that wasn't his fault, as I remember.
Yeah, he didn't take much blame on himself, and then went to Club Brugge for a bit of a recuperation.
Daniel Farke, equally, is the manager who holds the record for the most consecutive defeats in Premier League history. He had 16. I mean, that's spread out over a couple of seasons, but consecutive Premier League games for him, 16 of them he's lost in a row. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare if they're still in those roles come the new season with Burnley and Leeds. Meanwhile, Duncan, we were hearing from Adrian on Sunday about Wycombe's promotion push, which has taken a real positive turn, hasn't it? They've now got the advantage over Wrexham. How's that going?
They did, yeah. And then on Easter Monday, played Charlton Athletic, who are also in the mix, and lost 4-0.
4-0.
Very strong Brazil-Germany 2014 vibes, where it was like, well, sorry, but that's what it felt like, in the sense of like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and everyone was just sort of flabbergasted. So,
what did Wrexham do?
They compounded that defeat for Wycombe by going and winning at Blackpool, who've been in good form. So they're back in the box seat now. Although in a curious twist from the fixture computer, Wrexham played Charlton at home this weekend. So if Wycombe can pick up a result at Leyton Orient, then possibly Charlton could help them this week as opposed to hinder them. But yeah, it's
wow.
If
so
you're
Birmingham
a fan of,
are already up.
Birmingham are miles clear. They're almost in the Premier League. They're so far clear.
Then you got Wrexham, Wycombe, 2 points apart, and 2 points behind Wycombe are Charlton. Stockport in the mix as well. How many games to go?
2 games to go. So it's Stockport have got an outside chance. Wycombe's last 2 games against Orient away in 6th and Stockport at home in 5th. And Charlton in 4th play Wrexham in 2nd. So for fans of twists and turns, I would point them to League One's last couple of weeks.
Also worth looking out for perhaps a little bit is the game you're going to this Sunday, Natalie, Bournemouth against Man United.
Yes.
As the Cherries bid to become the 6th team this season to do the double over Man United.
Yes, and they come in the back of a new draw with Palace when they played with Palace played with 10 for 45 minutes. So there's been a drop of intensity at the end of the season for Bournemouth, and Iraola spoke about it, and he doesn't think that it's due to fatigue, even though it is very demanding physically, their style of play. But there's a lot of attention around a couple of players that might leave Bournemouth, especially with Jean Huijsen and Milos Kerkez. Huijsen is just so good. He's young and he doesn't look young. I did Bournemouth Fulham on his 20th birthday, and Iraola was just talking about how he never looked like he was a young player. He's just fearless on the pitch. So I understand how much attention there is around him. And talking about future prospects in terms of signings, there's a lot of talk about Matheus Cunha at Man United. Yeah. And honestly, I think it'd be a good fit for really? Man United. Yes.
My first reaction was that's a club that's had problems historically with quite a fractious dressing room. I'm not sure if his personality, at least as far as I understand it, is one that I would necessarily want to drop into that mix.
He also occupies quite a lot of the same space as Bruno. And maybe it's a replacement for Bruno if Bruno eventually wants to get out of there, which you'd fully understand.
But Bruno, he already spoke about how he likes to play deeper and how he sees himself playing a bit deeper in the future. And Matheus can play as a 10 and he can play as a 9 because he started playing as a 10 with Gary O'Neill and he really enjoys that role. So there's the versatility.
Makes
and
sense.
in terms of the personality, honestly, it's funny because it's
you met him, he's such a nice guy.
If you see his career, he never had problems with temper. It's been the last few months that has defined him as this tempered player.
And that Ipswich staff member was wearing glasses, which is quite provocative. So,
but I don't know. It's hard to explain because it was awful. It was horrible, honestly.
and the
red car afterwards. So.
Yeah.
but it hasn't been a pattern throughout his career.
Okay.
And technically, I think he would fit the way Ruben Amorim wants the team to
He's
play.
a brilliant player. He's a brilliant player.
I mean,
And scores goals.
It leans slightly into my theory that you can have all the data in the world, like Benji has at his fingertips, but if you have a really good game against a team, it really does you well. Because
especially United.
The opening game of last season was Man United Wolves, the one where Nana punched was at Kaladzic, I think, late on. And Cunha was brilliant that night. He just carried the ball so well. And,
Right.
And, United probably were like, oh, yeah, he's quite good.
Would he want to join a team below him in the table, though? I wonder. That's a question. In the mix for 17th, and currently in that spot, are West Ham. Benji, West Ham, special game for them this weekend. They head down to Brighton, former place of work of your manager, Graham Potter. Where do you stand on Potter's record at just over 100 days in at the Hammers?
I think he's got a pass. It's like with Man United and Amorim. I think the only reason they took the jobs, you'd assume, is if the owners told them it does not matter what you do this season.
He's taken that quite far.
It's a kind of well, it's like the whole thing is an extended pre-season,
right?
Which in which you can learn about things that work, and if that doesn't happen, which it hasn't at United or West Ham, then at least you can learn about things that aren't working, and there's plenty of that. So. Yeah, I reserve judgment until.
Have you seen any? Have you found the football more enjoyable than it was under J-Lo?
I can't really answer yes or no. Like it's just been there's been no obvious attributes.
So if you look at someone like Vitor Pereira coming in at Wolves, and there are loads of other examples, but can you see any signs of improvement under Potter?
I can't see any obvious Potterization that's happened. We're essentially the same sort of team that we were, somewhere in between a Moyes and a Lopetegui team. There is a bit more possession. There is a little bit more possession, but Lopetegui was doing that. Honestly, this season is one of the most forgettable West Ham seasons I can recall. I don't even feel strongly about it. I'm quite pleased that some people do, i.e. Nicholas Fulkrug, but I've just stopped caring about this season, and we go again next year. There's quite a lot of work to be done over the summer, I think, to make this squad coherent and with a kind of Potter stamp on it. I will judge Potter by Christmas next year. Not now.
All right.
Potter files would say that it does more than most managers. It takes them a long time to sort of get going.
Right.
That happened at Brighton. Didn't happen at Chelsea because they got fed up.
Also, if we finish 7th, that's winning the relegation battle. It's like a trophy.
I think that's it, though, for this one, listener. You're free to go about your business. Well done for sticking with us. And many, many thanks to Duncan, to Natalie, to Benji, and in the booth, Jake and producer Charlie. And you, listener, with the ears. Do have a great time and join us again at the weekend if you can. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.